Listen, I want to write a LinkedIn post and write the names of every single guest that has pitched us, because 100% of them have not listened to the podcast.
With like newsletters and stuff, with content, you don't have to be the best, because it's not like somebody's going to only purchase one software product for it. So you can be like living in an ecosystem and still win.
Which goes back to my original gripe, which is that you need marketers at the very beginning, precisely because building trust, building communities, and for marketing to work, you need time.
I'm Margaret Kelsey.
And I'm Devin Bramhall.
And this is Don't Say Content,
a show created in partnership with Share Your Genius. Okay, we have a fun episode today.
We really do.
This is like a lighthearted episode.
Yeah.
I don't know if we even talked about it or whether I was just desperate to find something interesting to talk about because I was bored with marketing, which happens sometimes. But this one is about the dumb things that employees and bosses say about marketing.
Yeah.
Because everyone says dumb stuff. And so we were like,
it's what makes us human.
Yeah.
Being dumb.
And also like marketing especially, I think it's so easy to fall back on jargon terms that are highly interpretable to make yourself sound smart.
Mm-hmm.
And both sides deploy that to varying degrees of hilariousness.
And when you say both sides, you mean like bosses, CEOs, and marketers themselves are both doing this on both sides.
Yeah, like CEOs pretending they know anything about marketing when they definitely don't. And it's so obvious. VCs too, you're just like, wow.
Marketing isn't hard, but it's not simple.
Yes, that is. Oh my gosh, I have like the best client right now. And that's literally what I was saying to her the other day. I was like, look, what I'm saying to you that's going to take more time than I thought. It's not complicated and I know how to do it, but you are completely not set up to support me doing it. And therefore, the tentacles are long and I have to find a way to be able to do it despite you not being ready in any capacity, right? I think what's really cool is when you work with the right person, they're like, I trust you. I get it.
Yeah. I think it's easy, but it's complicated.
Yes.
But it is psychology.
That's a great way to say it, because the thing that works is ultimately going to be intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
But in order for you to see that, you have to understand common sense around these things like human behavior.
Yes.
And you mostly don't.
And it's hard to check in with your intuition.
It's really just hard for us because I have to find a way to explain 1 + 2 to you, but in a way that is both complicated and then ultimately simple, so that you buy in for 5 minutes, long enough for me to do.
Anytime that I was advising and talking to a head of marketing, it was not the marketing that was the problem. It was always the executive alignment and the ability to like petition and get what you knew you needed to do to be like approved or have access to it. It was never actually a marketing challenge.
No, me neither. And you know what's funny? I was preparing an update for my client today that I'm going to talk to them about later. And I literally found myself writing this in all seriousness and planned to say this to their face. I'm like, please stop asking founders and investors for ideas. I was like, they don't know. Investors are some of the worst business strategists I've ever met.
I know.
I think it's like the marketers are really the best business strategists, the good marketers, obviously. And they're not in a position where anyone listens to them. And the people who they need to convince are so unskilled that they don't know what they don't know. And they think they know a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just make it more complicated than it has to be. It's so dumb. This work that we do is so stupid. Can you imagine how many more companies would have succeeded if they just started by having a marketer on the team at the very beginning?
Yeah.
I don't care what company you are. You need marketing at the jump, because if you don't, you are going to make a bunch of decisions that you're going to have to undo at a time when you need marketing to make forward progress, not fix all your mistakes which is thwarting any forward progress you might have by doing anything net new.
Yeah.
That is the reality, is actually, if you do not bring a marketer on as a co-founder of your company, you're doing it wrong. And I am like done trying to find another way to say that,
Yeah.
because every single person I work with or for, that is true.
Yeah, definitely with like in the software space and software startups. I think it became so easy to build software that they missed that piece of it, right? Like, it used to take more time and be more expensive. So you would have brought in, hey, we should be building this for a specific audience. Let's figure out who would actually have this need so we can go do it. And then I think like it got so much easier to build software companies that it was like, oh, we'll do all that like product work first. And then we'll just have the marketer figure out who we can market this to and then spin them around 20 different ways and change who the target audience will be. And then be like, why isn't this working?
Look, I think Audience Plus is such a good example of why marketers are necessary in the beginning.
Yeah.
They were struggling with product market fit. Anthony talked about this. It wasn't like, and that's normal, but like at the same time, they were building a brand, even if they didn't fully understand the product, were like, had a lot of affinity for and wanted
Yeah.
to interact with. And so you have to do both right. You can't just have really good marketing and not have a good product.
Yes.
But this is another example of like why product and marketing need to be on the core founding team and work very closely together, because in the early days especially, a lot of the quote unquote marketing you're doing is really like product related stuff,
Yeah. It's
right?
like
It's
product
like
research.
mhm.
Yeah.
And product marketing messaging, they're testing different engagement emails with your existing customers, because a lot of times, like with some of my clients, I'm like, I wish I had 6 months
Mhm.
to like just conduct experiments and try stuff without you having to hit a specific KPI by
Mhm.
this time, because realistically, if you had done that from the get-go, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because like I want their problems to be simple and I want to make progress really quickly. But then
Yeah.
it's you can't, because you're like constantly giving bad news. I'll find a quick way. And then you're like, fuck.
There's no quick way.
There's no-
Yeah, and I think about if marketing is fundamentally about changing people's thoughts and behaviors, that takes a while, right?
And you need to build trust to do it, which means you should start building trust in the industry from the very beginning. This is the thing. You bring a marketer on and you're like, okay, cool, we're going to turn on marketing. I'm like, that is not
Yeah.
like what?
Well, you can if you just follow that one easy playbook that other successful company did and talked about,
Oh,
and we'll
yeah.
just copy that and that will
Forever.
work and we can just turn it on.
Oh my God. I really want all founders to just stop listening to VCs when it comes to growth advice,
Yeah.
because they're only coming at it from their one perspective, which is logical to them and their needs.
Yeah.
They should be pushing it up against them more, but they can't because they don't know anything about marketing, which is why they need a marketer on the founding team. Look, I'll have a job forever
Yeah.
this way,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's not getting any more fun. It's why B2B is so far behind B2C all the time, because it's like we're just chasing our own tail around and around, wondering why things aren't getting better. And I'm like, hey, guess what? SaaS doesn't sell itself anymore. Like SaaS isn't buying from SaaS because SaaS doesn't have any money. And the companies that are selling like identity software, those folks, yes, they're buying, but they don't necessarily need digital marketing, to your point,
Mhm.
or and so it's like the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. So what you did, you posted on LinkedIn. I amplified it a little bit and you asked people to share the silliest, funniest, craziest things that either they've heard from bosses or that founders have heard from marketers, right?
Yes. Somebody like wrote me and was like, "Oh, don't say crazy. It's whatever." And I was like, "Guys, we need to calm down."
Yeah. No, I get it. That there has been that push. And I try to not internally, like with my team and stuff, I try to use wild instead of crazy.
One person told me they were working on a company blog. So this person was working at a company and their boss gave them direction on the company blog and how to write for it. And their boss told them, I don't know if I can you say it?
Yes. Their boss gave them writing direction feedback that they should write blog posts in the style of The Simpsons. And she was like, my dude, if I could write like The Simpsons, I would not be working here.
And apparently it was a blog post about making an apple pie.
ChatGPT could probably help that. Write an episode of The Simpsons about apple pies.
Honestly, there's a part of me that would be an interesting. There's something about a post about apple pie written in, but it's also which character.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think that's such bad direction because it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And you know what? This was a big thing at Animals in terms of how rigorous we were about defining what quality meant to us. Because I think every company should decide for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But it means that, and this is like the core of our podcast name, that's why you need to get specific. Don't say content, say something.
I got feedback one time. I'm trying to remember what it was, but like the thing stuck in my head. It was like blog feedback, and it was like, this needs to be written in like gonzo style journalism.
Oh my God. I can't stand. You know why? Because a lot of the people that talk about gonzo style journalism have only ever read Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and they haven't really dove into Hunter S. Thompson's like this full genius of writing. I'm like, tell me you read Fear on the Campaign Trail and then tell me what gonzo journalism is. Yeah. Short of that, please.
And also, I'll just like quickly become Hunter S. Thompson too, real quick.
No problem. A genius, an absolute genius. I actually
for this B2B SaaS blog.
As a baby coming up writer, Hunter S. Thompson and Tom Robbins and Chuck Palahniuk were my 3 inspirations. That is who I wanted to write. They were the ones that I quote unquote like copied in terms of my the style as I was learning to find what my style was. So much respect.
I should have hired you then based on that feedback.
I'm just saying. Okay. So one person worked for a boss who had a background in a really big, successful company and was a data scientist also. This is an example of like CEOs trying to pretend they know marketing. He'd be like, oh, how many conversions did that webinar get? Their product was complex, right? So it was like a B2B data quality monitoring software. And the sales cycles were really long. And so asking a question about the conversion rate on a single webinar is like just straight up the wrong metric.
How many times have you experienced that though?
Every time.
That feels so common of like people like, oh, marketing is about conversion. So how did that one piece of whatever convert? And you're like,
oh my gosh, I have more tea on this from the person. They had written in the story that their boss was learning marketing 101. And I was like, were they literally like trying to learn marketing by studying it? Or did you mean they were learning marketing 101 by having a marketer and trying to understand how to market a product? I assume it's the latter, but I have to know. And they were like, no, it was the former. He was reading HubSpot blogs and coming in with the latest about things like flywheel marketing. At one point, the boss turned off paid ads. Other times he would drill us on things like, how many customers did that blog post convert? And he would listen to Tim Ferriss and then be like, this is our marketing strategy now.
We said that at Startup Grind. Remember when we were watching those presentations and we would watch people like hold up and take photos of whatever slide, and it was like during these presentations that we were like, I can watch this happening in real time of this founder slacking this photo of the new marketing strategy to their head of marketing. We were like cringing watching it happen. We're like, no.
That was so hilarious. And so I still don't question that is exactly what happened. There's no part of me that's, it was a
maybe they were doing something else. It's no, that was a direct Slack saying, "Hey, I'm at this conference. This should be our new marketing strategy."
Also, like, I just get such white guy quote fatigue. There's so many people who, like, haven't said anything new in a while. It feels very table stakes what these people are actually saying. I'm like, "Guys, have you educated yourself since then?" Because it's like,
Yeah.
it's what they're saying is so basic and it's been repackaged so many times. I'm like, "This is not brilliant."
Yeah. Well, that was specifically yeah, the startup grind too, when the ones that we were watching people take pictures of was so table stakesy that we were like, "Oh god, that's not new.
I
We've been
know.
doing that for so long."
And the problem is there's no way to make a CEO or anyone in power look stupid because they just have already decided, right? And so you're like, you can't even shame them into good behavior if it comes to that because they just fire you. They're like, no, and find someone to tell them what they want to hear or find someone that they will listen to.
I had a good one where a marketer was telling me about a time that she was reviewing, like, the proposed product launch strategy, and it was mostly centered around this blog post. And when she was like, "Hey, for what we know about our target audience, do they read blog posts?" Because they were, like, selling to, like, executives, and the answer was obviously no. And she was like, "So why is that our product? Like, why are we doing that?"
I'm like trying to not laugh so loud that it's like,
It's so good. It's oh, because the HubSpot blog said that that's a part of a product launch checklist probably.
oh my god. And you know what's funny is I did learn marketing from HubSpot
Oh,
because,
yeah.
like, we all had to learn from, like, HubSpot, Customer.io, Mailchimp, like, those guys, they knew what they were talking about back then. They were right in the beginning, but it's like marketers have evolved since then. HubSpot
Yeah.
actually has articles about modern marketing practices. It's
Yeah.
just that for some reason, the executives aren't reading that. They're
Yeah.
reading the old shit, and it's just you guys are like I am constantly amazed at how technologically backwards the people who are funding tech
Mm.
are. The way they talk, the way they think that people adopt things, like, they're just sticks in the mud, and I'm like, "You're still using Outlook." Do you know what I mean? Like, you're just everything you use is so stodgy. It's like, "Why are we listening to you?"
I mean, I experienced that firsthand being in the VC world for a while and understanding that chasm of the expected channels of the go-to-market motion being so outdated from actual how people educate themselves and consume information this day and age. Yeah, email is great, I guess. Direct emailing everyone is a little like that channel's saturated now, right? And again, going back to like,
No, email still performs. That's the
well,
thing is it's a saturated platform, but I think that it's still good. It's an owned audience, in which case, like, it's performing better than it used to because people are doing a better job bringing on like, I feel like in a way the newsletter is more like a blog than it used to be
and
if
I
you're
agree
deploying it
with
that
you
way.
about subscriber-based emails. This was direct emailing.
Like cold calling emailing? What?
Like, all the like, the I'm sure you get these all the time of people just, like, randomly emailing you, and you can tell it's from
Yes.
a mail merge that they bought some list and whatever. Yeah, that was,
Ugh.
like, the I'm talking about that. I completely agree. Subscriber-based emails and newsletters are still performing. I think that the direct email, the channel is absolutely inundated, and you just immediately can see based on the subject line to delete it.
Listen, I wanna write a LinkedIn post and write the names of every single guest that has pitched us because 100% of them have not listened to the
I
podcast
know.
because they're like, "Hey, I would make a great guest." And I was like, I don't respond to any of them. I responded once, I forget why, but I was like, "This is everyone." And I get them all I'm and this is not an exaggeration,
Yeah.
almost every single day of the week.
It's because 'cause we're so popular.
I know. I actually wait, hold on. This person reached out to me on LinkedIn and they said, "I saw you have a community and I want to meet you and allow you to vet me as a potential guest speaker for your group." And then there was some other stuff and then I didn't respond, obviously.
Yeah.
And their follow-up was, "Hey, did you get my last message? I'd love to share some value with your audience and sit down for a chat with you." I'm like, "I'm sorry, do I work for you?" There was another one too. They're like, "Oh, as an author of this and that book and a podcast host, I'm open to being a guest on your podcast sometime to talk about blah, blah." And I was like, "Oh, sir,
Oh, sir.
we should get to some more of these because I'm having a really fun time on this episode." But I feel that the value we promise in the title. Okay. Oh, I had a couple good ones from a friend of mine who runs an agency.
Mm.
These are like client nightmares, and they were bizarre. So this one, I honest to God can't believe, but it is true. The client notified them, the agency, that they gave feedback, and the agency doesn't see it in the Google Doc. And so they ask for the client for it again. And she, frustrated, insists that she did send it. And so we booked a call with the client to discuss the invisible feedback. And on the call, the client lifts a ream of paper to show us and holds pages up to the camera one by one. And the feedback begins with, "Make it more magical." And this client runs a division for a very big, successful company you've heard of, and they all operate this way. This client truly thought that they were the problem to the point where I think my friend told me they fired them.
Yeah, no, that feels like I can tell that would not be that's a fireable client. That's like a, "I don't know how to work with you." This
No,
is
the
the way that
client fired
oh,
them.
the
The
client fired
client
the
thought they
agency.
were the problem. This is why I had that brief minute this year where I was like, should I just go corporate? Should I just try to get myself a job at a really big company? Because it sounds
Hysterical.
so easy.
So, I think maybe that note at the top of the paper was more of a request for the paper to become magical
Yeah.
so the feedback could be sent.
If you can be high up at a company like that,
Yeah,
like I would be rich. If
yeah.
I got one thing done in a year, I'd be a fucking genius.
I know.
Like,
I know. Things move so slowly in big corporate.
oh my gosh.
I
Okay, the
never could do
same
it.
person had another client name example. It says, I can't remember who posted this, but one freelance writer in my network told this story that a client hired them to do a case study. On the kickoff call, the writer asks who the customer is of the client. The client says, "What customer?" The writer says, "The one you want to do a case study on." Client says, "We don't have one." Writer pauses. Client, "I thought you said you were a writer." I'm like, "Honey, I think you need a fiction writer
Yeah,
because."
that is hysterical. And I think it was that last episode too, we were talking about how, like, even that idea of what's a testimonial, what's a customer case study, what's a customer story, where we use all of those terms interchangeably, but this person was coming up with an entirely new type of content for a case study.
Can you make up a customer
Yeah.
and what we might have done for them and the results? I'm
Yeah.
wondering how you get through your day-to-day life, first of all.
I thought it's interesting that when you're in school, even in
Mm.
college, you think about the people that you met, right? And like the people that you knew. And in college, you're like, there was some people that were clearly killing it and some people that you're like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And then years later, you find out that some of those people are doctors. You know what I mean? Some of those people are making important decisions. And it is a little bit of like, I felt that way with high school people and college people, where you realize what people are doing in the world. And you're like, oh, it's just like everyone dispersed into the world. And there was no, like, school was like, oh, there's like a hierarchy and there's whatever. And then people just get dispersed into the world to do whatever they want.
Yeah. I
And I
also
do think that audacity outperforms intelligence a lot of times.
I don't know. It's hard for me to say because I consult.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to really believe that because I'm like, man. But I will say that what was cool about my school is I went to a city school, so it was a commuter school. I'd gotten into NYU, but I couldn't afford it. My parents couldn't even be co-signers, like, they didn't have any money, and I went to UMass Boston, and the folks in my class, many of them were women of color who were the single bread earner, and either they were, like, single moms or they were the single bread earner, and who were working full time, taking care of their children and going to school.
Wow.
And they were the fucking smartest people in the class. And they were like calm. They were just like, they were
Yeah.
the best people to work around because it showed me this perspective. I was like, my problems are not problems. I should really rise to the occasion. And it was like,
Yeah.
that's a really inspiring environment to be in versus a school where everybody has lots of money and they're like,
"Oh, I
ooh.
have to go to class." It's, "No,
Yeah.
you get to go to class."
Yeah, and
Yeah.
also just how frustrating it could be to be around people who, like, think that solvable things are problems.
I
Anyway,
always say if you need something done, give it to a mom.
yeah, or just, like, a woman in general, because 'cause I'm not a mom and I can do everything, including take care of other people's kids.
I had a head of marketing who was told when they first started by their boss that marketers always just wanna change and fiddle with the website and wouldn't let them change anything on the website for, I think it was about a year. They couldn't touch the website because marketers just wanna always go, and it's like, yeah, the biggest digital footprint where people are looking for things that is core to our job role.
Oh my god. That's well, A, also, I think those days are a little bit over because of the way people's behavior is changing in
Yeah.
the world since the pandemic, where I think that's, like, our next episode, actually. I was like, "Do we even need websites anymore?" I find myself more often than not being like, for certain, like, to your point, like, there's certain industries now that it's not the starting point for the relationship,
Yeah.
and it's not even really the nurture point either. But,
Yeah.
yeah, the one of the biggest reasons why I never wanted to be CMO, like, I was happy to skip from VP to CEO because I was like, "The CMO job sucks," and it usually involves you fighting an inordinate amount with the CEO and the CTO and whoever the lead designer is about the website, and you
Mhm.
are the only person who is proposing doing anything that will impact the business. And you end up having to fight for months, compromise, and end up with something that's, like, pretty, doesn't sell the product, like, this dumb
The
combination of stuff.
Frankenstein. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it is true. I mean, my team is so small right now that I'm actually like, I'm a CMO, but I'm also doing, like, hands-on marketing. But I have heard that, and I have witnessed the fact that ultimately that is the CMO's job. And again, to go from VP to CMO, nobody teaches you those, like, executive alignment skills. Nobody's, "Hey, this is the work now." You just
Yeah,
get,
but,
like,
like,
thrust into
seasoned
it.
CMOs, like my boss, he knew what he was doing. He was good
Yeah.
at all those things. There was a time early on where the people who founded companies were so precious about their website because they, for some reason, they thought it was the core of their, like, human identity, and they
Yeah.
were like, "This must be right." And we're like, "This is a business tool. Calm the fuck down." But anyway, so this one was interesting because someone posted on my post about a founder who told him at a VC boot camp that they consider running a podcast a red flag for founders. He says apparently it's a signal that running the company isn't their top priority. And what was interesting about this is one, I agree in general that it is a red flag when that's what a founder or CEO comes to you with when you first start. That
Yeah.
has happened to me. And I was like, okay, do you wanna launch a completely new product, build an audience, and then hopefully some of those people will convert in a year plus to I understand why it's a red flag. I think nowadays, like, when my boss said that to me, it was more than 5 years ago. It was,
Yeah.
like, 6 or 7 years ago, in which case, like, podcasts, they weren't as easy to spin up.
Yeah.
They
Yeah, I
didn't
was
have
gonna
the
say,
same.
like, the same, like, op structure. Like, now
Yeah.
it's yeah.
You weren't logically, like, repurposing content, like, it just none of the tools were there
Yeah.
to make it make sense. I do think now it is different. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. It's definitely not the first thing I would go to. I've seen some agencies deploy podcasts as a means of lead gen and
Yeah.
building trust that I think is really smart. Omniscient does that, and I'm like, and I think that's really smart. But then what was interesting was that it sparked a little bit of a, like, healthy, productive debate about podcasts
Yeah.
in general and that whole topic, and I have to say, I have to agree with Deborah on the way she sees podcasts, which is like they're a product in and of themselves,
Mhm.
and I believe in all the benefits around, like, learning about your customer and creating content and all that stuff, but I still agree that it is a product and it's a lot. I mean, you and I literally launched our own podcast,
Yeah.
and, like, it's work to not just do it, but keep it going and keep it interesting, and we don't try to grow at all. But if we wanted to, we're like, "Oh, it's fine."
Well, just do it. I don't
People
care.
just keep following us. We're like, "Oh, okay, great."
No, but so this brings up a really good point because I do think that is the right way to think about any content program, whether it's a podcast or you're like activating a founder's brand through some sort of social channel or even a newsletter. Like you have to think of it as a product, right? What is the product market fit? What is the content market fit? Does the content fit the market? Is this going to have product market fit? Are we differentiated against what other content programs are out there for people to get informed about whatever it is? How are we going to be different? With like newsletters and stuff, with content, you don't have to be the best because it's not like somebody's going to only purchase one software product for it. So you can be like living in an ecosystem and still win. It's like more of a cooperative thing, but you
Yeah.
do have to think about all of those things. And is the target audience of this content program also the target audience for the product that then they could buy? Because you could build something totally adjacent, right? And I
Yeah.
think a lot of founder brands and the content programs that are with that can easily go in that direction of it's, oh yeah, like the founders LinkedIn is all like other CEOs and their friends and they're building all this content over there, but it doesn't actually talk to the target audience of who they're actually trying to sell their own product to. And
Yeah.
so I do think you have to think about that and think about, okay, do these two products, the actual product and now the content product, do they have the same audience? Because otherwise, you can do a lot of work and not actually help the company at all.
Does your customer listen to podcasts? Let's start there.
Seriously.
No, but it's true. I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I think for me, so many people get caught up on the what, when what you're saying, rightfully, I think, is that it's more about the how.
Yeah.
It's not, "Should we launch a podcast?" The question should be, "Where do we have unique advantage
Yeah.
to capture or to attract our target customer or an ecosystem within our industry that includes our target customer
Mhm.
in a way that is either faster or whatever?" That's the question to ask. The channel will fall into place
Yeah.
after that. The problem with the founder request is that they're always thinking about, "Oh, the latest one is, oh, we should have a YouTube channel."
Mm.
I'm like, "Why? Give
Mhm.
me the mathematical reasons." I
And
think
also, what is the content that you're gonna put there? What's the message? What's the story? What's the thing that's actually gonna be helpful? And to your point, it could be any channel.
yeah,
Kinda like channels don't even put
no.
it out on whatever channel you wanna put it out on,
Well,
if your
no,
target audience actually lives there or
yeah.
inhabits there. But it doesn't really matter. If your target audience looks at LinkedIn a bunch, is on Instagram, reads email newsletters, sometimes listens to podcasts, I don't care which channel you start with first.
I do. I care that, what are you like, they may be on there, but what are they using it for? And are
True.
they on Instagram for play? Like, when I see the funny click up videos on Instagram, I love them, but I'm like, I love them because they're entertaining. I don't need your software, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of like, where is your audience making business decisions?
Mm.
And so even when you come down to tactics, it's like this whole idea of like executive marketing or thought leadership from the executive. It's like, for how many days Will you be interested in this and make
Yeah.
time to create content? They may be perfect as a marketing strategy, but they're not because practically they don't have the time to commit to it. It's not about anything. It's not about the channel. It's not about the tactic. You have to choose based on where your unique advantage is. And that unique advantage includes your ability to execute on it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not strategy.
And that's the thing. You were joking around that we haven't been focused on growth, but consistency
Yeah.
is growth with content programs. You don't have to do a whole bunch of hacky shit.
Right.
You just have to be consistent in the program. And that's where people, I agree, that's where people get kneecapped all of the time in every content program, is that they just aren't consistent with it. And it shocks me every time. And it shocked me with our podcast. It shocked me when I was at that conference and somebody is like, hey, you're Margaret, you have that podcast, don't say content. And I was at like a, conference for distribution. And I'm like, whoa, that's strange. And it's because we didn't stop.
Which goes back to my original gripe, which is that you need marketers at the very beginning, precisely because building trust, building communities, and for marketing to work, you need time.
Yeah.
I, honest to God, am like, please either start investing in content early, but don't spend the most amount of money on it, right? Get someone in who can play around with the early Greg Ciottis, right? Who are just brilliant people who did cool stuff and try things. And do have a paid media program. I do think if you need to show growth right away and you're in an industry where doing like paid search or paid social or whatever actually works, which is
There's a
that
big
won't
if.
necessarily work
Yeah.
for. Yeah. But just do that for a while. Like the number of companies that came to us, they were like, yep, we started off doing paid media and now we're ready to build like the more consistent organic engine underneath it. I'm like,
Yeah.
smart. That makes
Yeah.
sense. But it really goes back to you have to have marketing from the very beginning. And by beginning, I mean on your founding team. Or if not, you need more marketers than you need these people who made a company a thing 10 years ago. Because I'm like, 10 years ago is ancient history as it relates to digital marketing. And
Yeah.
so they don't have any good advice for you,
And
probably.
also, I think that you need to reward marketers' consistency
Yeah.
and not their shiny one-off projects and ideas. I mean, the thing that I've said the most over the last couple of years is repetition doesn't ruin the prayer. Repetition
No.
doesn't ruin the prayer. Repetition doesn't ruin the prayer. It's, hey, we're saying the same thing again. That's marketing.
Yeah.
We're saying the same thing.
That's why all those dudes continue to annoyingly quote the same guys over and over, because those guys are saying the same thing over and over for years.
Yeah.
Come on,
But
people.
that's the biggest kneecap, is especially when you're talking about like activating a founder's brand or some executive that's going to make content, is that it's normal for human beings to get sick of themselves repeating the same message.
Yeah.
I'm sure you knew that as a CEO too, is you have to be so consistent and repeat the message, because the 17th time that you've said it, somebody's actually hearing it for the first time or thinking about that thing for the first time. And so that's a piece of it too, is this executive going to get bored of saying the same thing or delivering the same message again and again?
Yeah. There are people who worked for me who I see, they're like, oh, this idea or whatever. And it's funny because I'm like, okay, it took like many times saying it.
Yeah.
And they don't even realize no one's like stealing an idea or anything. I don't believe in that. I think
Yeah.
every idea is already out there. But like they're espousing things that I was trying to bring into the culture back then now. And I'm like, good. Because the message came across, but that's how long it takes. That's happened to me before.
Yeah.
I literally looked at a blog post I wrote in 2018 where I was basically like, community is the new marketing. And I talked about my strategy that I don't think I ever published this. I just found it. I was like, this is everything I'm writing in my book and everything that's like current and
Yeah.
the topic du jour. And it was 2018.
I feel like the TLDR of our podcast that we've talked about before is everything's the same as it always was, and everything is completely different. And if we can hold those truths both together, That is the complexity of marketing right now.
And no one's ideas are new.
No.
None of us are original, and it's fine.
We're all just little chat GPTs mixing things together that have already existed.
Yeah, like, the only thing that will Margaret gave you the most true, accurate advice that you will ever get is it's not enough to have the idea.
Um,
You have to say that idea so many times over such a long period of time, and that is how it's not the what, it's the how. You have to be really skilled at spreading it and owning it, otherwise you don't own it.
yeah. And that's the head fake too, is that bringing it back to this episode, it also works internally
Yeah.
when you're talking to your boss, or if you are a founder that is talking to marketers that you really want them to understand your vision. It's the same thing.
Yes.
It's like that consistency of message, consistency of repeating the same idea.
Is it though?
Well, if it doesn't work, then you got to find a new job.
I'm just saying the content marketer refrain, which is they say content takes a long time. That one never really resonated even with me because it's true, but also like you can say that till you're blue in the face. It only is going to make your boss think you're less qualified.
That's
But yes, you have to be able to make the right case and say it a lot and then prove it. It actually, what you're saying doesn't apply to marketers getting buy-in from their bosses because it's just not, they're a whole different breed. All right. This was really fun. It's not at all where I thought we were going to go with it, but there it is. I know.
It never is.
All right, everybody. Godspeed and good luck. Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Okay, y'all. That's a wrap. Thank you, as always, for listening.
We'll be back next week. And just remember, you're doing great. You're doing great.
30% of you are doing great. The rest, you got to get your shit together. Come on.
You know which side you're on this week.
You know.
You know. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
You and I literally launched our own podcast.
Yeah.
And like, it's work to not just do it, but keep it going and keep it interesting. And we don't try to grow at all. But if we wanted to, we're like, oh, it's fine.
We just do it. I don't care.
People just keep following us. We're like, oh, okay.